The 1960s, one of the most divisive decades in history, marked by the Vietnam War and anti-war protests, the era was a pivotal moment for counterculture, youth, and an emerging generation gap. The three major trends throughout the 60s were modernism, modern illustration, and psychedelic art. Modernism originated in 1940s Switzerland. This laid down the foundations for graphic design and its development during the mid to late 20th century. The style focuses on simplicity and objectivity through negative space, grid systems, and a preference for sans serif typefaces. Although modernism is associated with the 1950s, it influenced the majority of design in the 1960s. Modernist illustration. As consumerism grew by the 1960s, so was the need for graphics that had commercial appeal. Though most designs have similarities to modernism, the approach tends to be more relaxed, illustrative, and organic. Psychedelic art, which is the trend that I will be focusing on, emerged in the 1960s as a reaction to the conformity of modernism. However, it also reflects the emotional impact the Vietnam War had on the youth. Psychedelic art formed a new identity for the youth, whilst creating an escape from the reality of the Vietnam War. These posters are examples of modernism in the 1960s. The poster on the right is by Joseph Müller Brockmann, and the poster on the left is by Dietmar Winkler. As you can see, they have a very restrictive use of colour. They follow grid systems and they're using a sans serif typeface. Here are some examples of modern illustration in the 1960s. So the poster on the left is Charlie Harper and the poster on the right is Jacqueline Casey for MIT. As you can see, they don't stray too far from modernism. They still use geometric shapes and grid systems. However, they are definitely more organic and illustrative. These are examples of psychedelic posters from the 1960s. As you can see, they're completely different to modernism and don't follow any of the rules of modernism. So there are no grid structures, it's very fluid, the typography is quite difficult to read, and the colours used are vibrant and bright and slightly odd to mimic a drug trip. The psychedelic movement emerged from the reaction against the modernist movement, an emotional response to the Vietnam War, and also opportunities that were created with new technology. Print could now be more vibrant and complex compared to the earthier tones in the 1950s, and 87% of Americans owned a television by 1960, which created a much more graphic awareness of the wars taking place, unlike the stories and that you'd hear from people coming back from war. Television brought the brutality of war to the comfort of our living rooms. Other characteristics of the psychedelic art movement included use of collage. As we can see on the right, Victor Moscoso has used an image of a woman in his poster, and there is the same use of vibrant colour, and many of the posters were actually inspired by Art Nouveau and the art of the Victorians, and you can see that especially in the poster on the right hand side. It's very organic and decorative in that way. They also valued the overall appearance of the poster over information. This is because the poster still communicated the event it was advertising through its bold and different appearance. This created a cult-like aspect to the posters. The design was a symbol of the youth. Today, many artists still use psychedelic art to sell tours and album covers. These examples are Nate Duvall for the Black Keys in 2013 on the left-hand side, and Bonnie McLean for Florence and the Machine in 2016. These examples have a striking resemblance to the 60s movement, however, they are quite cliche in their appearance. In Tame Impala's music video for The Less I Know the Better, the psychedelic art has evolved into marbled paint due to the technology we have today. Rock music is usually the genre associated with psychedelia. However, psychedelic art is becoming more common in genres such as rap. Producers such as Lyrical Lemonade have started a new trend of music video editing. Footage can be distorted to look similar to optical illusions used in posters from the 1960s. Some footage may be highly saturated to convey a drug trip. Overlays and animations can be added to describe the indescribable drug trips. New technology has allowed for psychedelic art to transcend to new mediums.